Good evening, I'm Patrick, and upon watching this you're going to hear from Jody, Jack, James and myself as to how we went about constructing our VBA model. We will break down for your understanding how we made subroutines which had outputs ranging from PMT calculations to message box displays. Over the course of designing our model, we had the intent to maximise user friendliness. We achieved this by having each sub-question on a different sheet and employ command buttons to run the subroutine. I'll start off by walking you through how we completed question 1A. The question required us to complete a program which showed input boxes for users to provide their loan amount, rate of return and the number of periods denoted N. Furthermore, the results must be displayed in a message box. As you can see in our code, we first created a command button. We then proceeded to program specific ranges for all variables, which then fed into the inbuilt conventional PMT calculation. Our last line of code was to establish a message box saying, your monthly payment is XYZ.
The objective of question 1B was to display the client's interest rate dependent on the amount of money they had invested. As the investment amount increased, the client's interest rate should also increase. To complete this question, we utilized select case functions and message boxes to display the interest rates. The first case of a deposit amount between $0 and $10,000 was linked to a message box displaying the interest rate of 0%, the lowest rate available. The second case of deposits of amounts between $10,000 and $20,000 was linked to a box displaying the interest rate of 12.5%. Finally, the third case of deposits of amounts over $20,000 was linked to a message box displaying the rate of 17.5%. Furthermore, as a precautionary step, if the client entered an investment less than 0, they were told to enter the correct value. A VB new line code was also entered to make the error message appear in a professional-looking format. Overall, the message boxes and case functions provide a simple way of displaying the client's interest rate. However, to be accurate, the correct case parameters must be properly identified. The objective of question 1C was to display the factorial of a number entered by the user. To achieve this, we utilize input boxes so that a number can be entered by the user. The input number was then linked back to cell B1, where the input number was displayed. Excel's factorial function was then linked to calculate the factorial value given in cell B1 and display the output in cell B2. Utilizing Excel's inbuilt function, overwriting a new function, sped up the process. It is important to note, however, that for values greater than 171, Excel outputs a number error.
Moving on to question 2. In part A, the question asks us to write a future value function for the bank. The bank offers different interest rates according to how much was deposited periodically. This question did provide a challenge to the group and I. However, we managed to create codes to address the issue. We started by creating a command button to activate the VBA. We first had to insert input boxes to allow for the user to input their data. We did one on deposit, the other on rate, and lastly one on the number of periods. We then linked a cell to hold the entered data. These cells were renamed to their according purpose for ease when coding. Once completing the input boxes, an if and then function was used to alter the chosen rate according to the bank's offered interest rates and the amount deposit. 6 if functions were used to show different rates according to the deposited amount, and 1 for the rate if it was less than 0. Lastly, we made a function to calculate the bank PV. Using the information provided for the function to work, we needed to calculate the present value, as this was one of the paras needed for the function. This was done using the function already provided to us in Excel. To create a function, we needed 3 paras. These paras were displayed in the function to show the equation. Para 1 was the calculated PV, Para 2 was the entered rate, and para 3 was the entered number of periods. The function was able to get a result and then display to the user with a message box saying the future value and the altered interest rate.
We wanted to establish the total pay, performance and current payments summated, to be received by a salesperson. The base salary is assumed to be defined as the current payment received by the salesperson, and the total pay is assumed to be the total reward compensating the worker for their sales. The reward received by the salesperson is based on 3 different total unit and total sales scenarios, with an assumed fixed base salary across all these 3 scenarios. Scenario 1 arises if more than 10,000 units are involved in more than 5,000 sales. Scenario 2 is if more than 10,000 units were sold, or if more than 5,000 sales were made. The final scenario was based on any alternative. For example, less than 10,000 total units involved in less than 5,000 total sales. The reward will be determined by a given formula under each scenario. To start coding for this question, 3 input boxes were needed for the user to enter their chosen amounts of total sales, total units, and their current given payment. The data was stored in certain cells by using the range command and renaming the cells to the corresponding data name. The 3 scenarios can be modeled in VBA through use of the if, and then functions, based on an input of total sales and total units involved and a given payment. For example, if total sales is greater than 5,000 and total units is greater than 8,000, then the formula total sales times by 2.5% plus the current payment will produce a total pay or reward to be received by the salesperson. A function was then made for the final scenario where the result was the salesperson's current payment minus $25. This involved use of a para variable which was equal to the current payment minus this $25. Finally, an if command was used in the function to activate the function only when the total sales were less than 5,000 and the total units were less than 10,000. We finally coded the reward to say error if this final scenario was the case, as the reward would be non-existent.
Question 3, Part 1, focuses on our ability to manipulate message boxes. In particular, we were required to change the title, have 2 separate lines of information, and lastly, have button options. As you will see, we separate our lines by using VB new line. To get buttons, we enter VB abort, retry, ignore, all one word. Finally, we enter the desired title for the message box at the end. The result was a customized message box of the question's requirements.
In question 3b, we needed to calculate the present value through the use of subroutine and display the answer through a message box. We first created a command button to link our code for easy accessibility. We declared the variables we created through the dim command and then proceeded to make input boxes. We made 3 input boxes for cash flow, annual interest rate, and number of periods. By creating these, it allowed for the user to input their desired information. We then linked the entered information with delegated cells. These cells were renamed to the correlating data information for easy use when coding. For example, you can see that the data entered for cash flows was held in a cell renamed to be cash_flow. From there, we were able to calculate the present value with the entered data. A message box then appears saying PV is, and then the calculated answer.
Question 3c was a simple exercise involving 2 numbers being inputted into an Excel cell and therefore an input box within VBA. 3 if functions were coded. If the first number is less than the second number, if the first number is greater than the second number, and if the first number is equal to the second number. The if functions resulting from the numbers chosen by the user to be inputted will be displayed in a resulting message box.
Throughout this experience, we've expanded our skills in VBA. These skills are transferable to future job opportunities. For example, if working in a bank, you need quick, easy, visually pleasing ways to work out loan details. This can be achieved through the use of input and message boxes.
However, we did face some challenges when creating VBAs. These include analysing what code is needed to achieve certain outputs and discovering and correcting any errors embedded in the codes.
We are grateful for this opportunity as we now have skills in basic VBA methods. We can expand on these skills in the future for jobs in financial coding and other VBAs.
Easy.
You totally stole it.
Yeah, I know.